Seven Sermons to the Dead is a collection of 7 mystical or Gnostic texts written in 1916 by Carl Jung, holding a unique place among his work. Composed during a period of intense inner experiences, these sermons were attributed by Jung to the ancient religious teacher Basilides, a Gnostic master from Alexandria, the city where East and West meet. Rather than identifying himself as the author, Jung preferred to sign the work in Basilides' name, connecting his profound reflections to the spirit of Gnosticism, which views self-knowledge and the integration of opposites as the path to wholeness. In these sermons, Jung addresses significant themes that would later become central to analytical psychology, such as the concept of the pleroma, the undifferentiated totality, individuation, and the integration of opposites. These texts are included at the end of the Red Book, Liber Novus, one of Jung's most profound and introspective works, which remained in his family's possession until its posthumous publication in 2009. Seven Sermons to the Dead is the only part of this material that Jung shared during his lifetime, distributing private copies to friends and students. He believed these teachings were essential, shedding light on a moment of self-discovery and profound wisdom. The themes explored in these sermons remain a valuable source of reflection, especially for those seeking meaning, balance, and a peace that honors every part of who we are. The notes and introduction to the Red Book, organized by Sonu Shamdasani, provide insights into this pivotal moment in Jung's life, helping readers understand how this work contributes to a psychology focused on wholeness and the acceptance of our complexity. In this video, we'll explore how Jung's teachings on the unconscious and human nature can help us integrate the opposing forces that shape our personalities, fostering a more complete and balanced life. And if you wish to deepen your understanding of yourself and unlock your hidden potential, I invite you to check out our ebook, Alchemy and Archetypes, Exploring Inner Transformation Through Jungian Psychology. Inside, you'll find practical exercises revealing the secrets of Jung's psychology and how to integrate them into your life. Link in the first comment. First Sermon. The first sermon of the 7 Sermons to the Dead begins by introducing the concept of the pleroma, one of the deepest and most enigmatic pillars of Jung's vision. The pleroma is described as the all and the nothing, an absolute state where all qualities coexist but cancel each other out. It is total fullness, yet also absolute emptiness, as there is no differentiation, form, or boundaries in this state. Jung explains that the pleroma is the origin of all things. It is the primordial state from which the created world emerges, yet it remains untouched by it. In other words, the pleroma is the invisible foundation of existence, but it is not something we can fully comprehend or directly access. For human beings, the pleroma represents the infinite potential within us, the connection to everything that exists, yet it also presents a challenge. If we lose ourselves in this undifferentiated state, where light and darkness, good and evil, life and death merge into one, we risk dissolving our individuality. For Jung, this dissolution represents psychic death, the erasure of what makes us unique. The created world, on the other hand, is the realm of differentiation. Here, the qualities of the pleroma, such as light and darkness, hot and cold, good and evil, become visible and active. In the created world, these forces do not cancel each other out, but instead enter into conflict and interaction, shaping our experiences and creating motion. While the pleroma is static and eternal, the created world is dynamic and mutable. For Jung, humanity, as part of the created world, carries the essence of the pleroma. However, individuation, the drive to become unique, is what transforms this potential into reality, helping us integrate the opposites that shape our psyche. Imagine, for example, a person who represses their sadness because they believe they must always be happy to have value. In doing so, they try to live solely in the light, ignoring the shadow that is also part of them. Yet this repression distances them from wholeness, as their sadness holds important insights about their desires, needs, or boundaries. The principle of individuation demands that they acknowledge and integrate this sadness as part of their experience, learning to accept and transform it. Jung points out that pairs of opposites, such as life and death, good and evil, light and darkness, are qualities of the pleroma that affect us in the created world. In the pleroma, these forces balance and cancel each other out, but in our psyche, they come into conflict and challenge us. This conflict, however, is essential as it drives us to grow and understand ourselves. For example, if someone tries to live only in pursuit of the good and the beautiful, they will inevitably encounter the bad and the ugly, because in the pleroma, these qualities are inseparable. By denying the negative, they become victims of the very forces they try to avoid, living an unbalanced and incomplete life. Salvation, according to Jung, lies in recognizing that these qualities coexist within us and that the key to inner peace lies in integration, not denial. The pleroma, therefore, is not something to be overcome or conquered but understood and accepted as part of who we are. It is the field of infinite possibilities we carry within us, but it only becomes meaningful when we transform it into something unique through individuation. Jung warns that if we strive to achieve an ideal state of absolute plenitude, such as trying to eliminate all pain or achieve a perfect good, we will end up returning to the pleroma and losing ourselves in it. This happens because the pleroma has no inherent qualities. It is merely the potential for all of them. Our task as human beings is to live in the created world, differentiating and integrating the forces that emerge from this potential. Ultimately, the first sermon teaches us that true fulfillment does not come from seeking perfection or eliminating opposites but from accepting our complexity. We are challenged to live firmly in the created world, facing the tensions between light and shadow, good and evil, while acknowledging that these forces come from the same source. Individuation, therefore, is the process of giving form to this inner chaos, creating an authentic and meaningful life. Jung concludes that the pleroma teaches us something profound. We are both the whole and the part, both the infinite and the finite. Our journey is to find balance between these dimensions, accepting the paradox that makes us human and allowing the infinite potential of the pleroma to manifest in our unique existence. In the second sermon, Carl Jung takes us deeper into the exploration of the pleroma, introducing two of its primary manifestations, God and demon. These archetypes are not external entities or moral opposites but complementary polarities that arise from the differentiation of the pleroma. God and demon represent the fundamental extremes of human experience: fullness and emptiness, creation and destruction, light and shadow. God is fullness, bringing creation and light, while the demon is emptiness, dissolving and consuming. Together, they symbolize the extremes of creation and destruction, essential for the balance of life. These forces cannot be separated. Where God operates, the demon is also present. Where there is fullness, emptiness encroaches. Where there is light, shadows form. Jung warns us against the simplistic view of good versus evil. Instead, God and demon are presented as interdependent forces, indispensable for the balance of life. In this context, Abraxas emerges as an even more enigmatic and powerful figure. Abraxas is not merely the sum of God and demon but the force that transcends and integrates them. He is described as the active principle that keeps the world in motion, uniting creation and destruction in an eternal dance. Abraxas does not take sides between opposites. He is the dynamic tension that binds them, the yes and no expressed in a single word. Jung warns that Abraxas is terrible because he challenges our need to categorize the world into good and evil, light and shadow. He represents paradox in its purest form, forcing us to confront the truth that these opposites coexist within us and the world around us. A practical example of how God, demon, and Abraxas operate in our lives can be seen in the cycle of birth and death. When a new life is created, God is present, bringing the fullness of existence. But inevitably, this life will be confronted by mortality, by destruction, which is the mark of the demon. Abraxas, in this cycle, is the force that connects both poles, transforming birth and death into parts of the same process. On a psychological level, Jung challenges us to recognize these forces within ourselves. God and demon are not external figures but internal energies that shape our emotions, choices, and behaviors. Imagine, for example, a person who wants to create something new, a project, a relationship, or a life change. They feel the inspiration and motivation, God, to move forward but also face doubts, fears, and the need to let go of something from the past, demon. Abraxas is the process that transforms these forces into action, allowing something new to emerge from the tension between light and shadow. Jung also shows us that ignoring or denying one of these forces is dangerous. If we fixate only on God, seeking the good and the positive, we end up repressing our shadow, the destructive aspects that are also part of who we are. On the other hand, if we allow ourselves to be consumed by the demon, we fall into emptiness, apathy, and stagnation. Wisdom lies in accepting that these opposites coexist and learning to live with them in balance. The terrible aspect of Abraxas arises precisely here. Accepting that creation and destruction, light and shadow are inseparable is not comfortable. It requires courage to face the paradox that life is made of dualities that are never fully resolved. Abraxas forces us to abandon illusions of perfection or total control, demanding that we accept the unpredictable flow of existence. Imagine, for example, an artist in the midst of creation. They experience the impulse of God, the inspiration, the vision of what they want to create. But they are also confronted by the demon, the fear of failure, technical limitations, the sacrifice of abandoning ideas that do not work. Abraxas is present in the act of creation itself, in the transformation of internal conflict into something tangible and meaningful. Abraxas also challenges us to look at the world with a broader perspective. In our society, we often seek to avoid suffering and pursue only what brings us pleasure and comfort. However, Abraxas reminds us that real growth arises from the tension between opposites. True happiness is only possible because we know pain. Success only has meaning because we have faced failure. At the end of the sermon, Jung invites us to stop fighting against opposites and to accept the constant movement between fullness and emptiness. God and demon cannot be eliminated, but must be recognized and integrated. Abraxas, as a symbol of totality, calls us to live with awareness within the paradox, finding peace in the dynamic balance between light and shadow, creation and destruction. The second sermon leaves a transformative message. Life is not made of simple choices between good and evil but of a continuous flow between opposites. Abraxas is the energy that keeps this dynamic alive, challenging us to abandon our certainties and embrace the complexity of existence. True fulfillment comes when we accept the paradox as part of who we are and find harmony within constant motion. The third sermon, Jung dedicates himself to deepening the meaning of Abraxas, which was briefly introduced in the second sermon as the force that transcends God and demon. Here, Abraxas is explored as the symbol of the unity of opposites, the source of all life, destruction, light, shadow, truth, and falsehood. He is not a god in the traditional sense but a primordial force encapsulating the totality of existence. Abraxas is the dynamic principle that unites creation and destruction. He transcends the duality of good and evil, symbolizing the totality of life and death in a single act. For Jung, the power of Abraxas lies precisely in its incomprehensibility. It cannot be understood or categorized by the rational mind, as it defies our need to divide the world into good and evil, right and wrong. Abraxas embodies the truth that all things contain their opposites, that there is no light without darkness, nor creation without destruction. Jung emphasizes that Abraxas is terrible because it destroys the illusions of separation. As humans, we tend to seek light and avoid darkness, to create without accepting destruction. Abraxas confronts us with the reality that life is composed of both forces and that accepting this paradox is essential for our wholeness. This idea can be unsettling because it demands that we face our shadow and accept the most destructive aspects of our psyche. For example, a person who represses their aggressive impulses might take pride in being peaceful, but this repression often results in bottled-up anger that explodes at an opportune moment. Abraxas invites us to integrate these conflicting forces, recognizing that even our shadow impulses have a role to play in our growth. A clear example of Abraxas is the cycle of birth and death. He is present in the creative act, such as the emergence of a new life, but also in the inevitable destruction that accompanies the end of that life. However, Abraxas is not merely the beginning or the end. He is the cycle itself, the movement that connects creation and destruction in a continuous flow. Consider, for example, a forest. When a tree falls, it may seem that something has been lost. But at the same time, that fall creates space for new trees to grow and provides nutrients to the soil. This balance between death and rebirth is the essence of Abraxas, who keeps the world in constant motion and renewal. Within the psyche, Abraxas operates as the principle that helps us integrate internal opposite. While God and demon represent extremes, such as the pursuit of perfection or the fear of destruction, Abraxas is the force that balances these poles, allowing conflict to transform into growth. For example, imagine a person in a romantic relationship. They experience both the joy of connection and the fear of losing that bond. These seemingly opposing feelings coexist and create tension. Abraxas is present in the movement between these poles, helping the person find emotional balance and grow through the relationship rather than being paralyzed by the tension. The third sermon makes it clear that resisting Abraxas is resisting life itself. Accepting Abraxas means embracing the paradox and recognizing that both light and darkness have a place in our journey. This does not mean we should seek destruction, but rather that we should accept it as part of reality. This acceptance is fundamental to the process of individuation, which Jung describes as the path to becoming whole. Individuation is recognizing and integrating all aspects of our psyche, both the luminous and the shadowy, allowing our totality to emerge. Abraxas is the symbol of this dynamic totality, a reminder that our essence lies not in choosing between opposites but in living with both. In the end, Abraxas teaches us that wholeness can only be achieved when we accept our complexity. He challenges us to abandon the struggle against our internal opposites and to live with awareness in the continuous flow of creation and destruction. True freedom lies in embracing the paradox of existence, allowing Abraxas to guide us toward an authentic and balanced life. The fourth sermon. This sermon takes us to the heart of the interaction between two essential forces of the psyche and existence, Eros and the tree of life. Carl Jung presents them as archetypes symbolizing, respectively, the burning desire that drives transformation and the patient growth that sustains continuity. Despite their opposing natures, Eros and the tree of life are not rivals. They are inseparable partners in the great cycle of creation and human maturation. Eros is the force of fire, the impulse that burns intensely and moves us to act, create, and transform. It is the desire that consumes but also illuminates. In its passionate nature, Eros is ephemeral. Like a flame, it cannot last forever. It is what propels us out of inertia and launches us toward the new, but on its own, it is unsustainable. The fire of Eros is essential for starting something, but without a solid foundation, it quickly burns out, leaving ashes behind. The tree of life, on the other hand, is the opposite of Eros. It grows slowly, accumulating strength and substance over time. It represents stability, patience, and the ability to sustain what has been initiated. If Eros is the fire that transforms, the tree of life is the earth that nourishes and gives form to growth. It reminds us that true maturation does not occur in moments of intensity but in the constant and persevering process of building. Jung describes the dynamic between Eros and the tree of life as essential to wholeness. One cannot exist without the other. If we live solely under the dominion of Eros, we seek constant excitement but quickly exhaust ourselves. On the other hand, if we cling only to the tree of life, we risk becoming rigid and stagnant, unable to embrace change. The interaction between these forces reflects life as it truly is, a cycle between the desire for transformation and the need for sustenance. These forces also appear within our psyche as internal movement. Think of someone who, driven by the passion of Eros, starts a new project. The initial energy is intense and inspiring, but soon the challenge of sustaining that project arises. At this point, the patience and resilience of the tree of life become indispensable. Without it, the project is lost in the exhaustion of a fire that consumes everything too quickly. Conversely, if the enthusiasm of Eros is absent, the project will never begin. Jung uses the number 4 to organize these fundamental principles of the psyche. The sun, which illuminates, Eros, which transforms, the tree of life, which sustains, and the demon, which destroys. Each plays an essential role in the balance of existence. The sun is the creative light, while Eros initiates the cycle with its passion. The tree of life provides the necessary support for what has been created to grow, and the demon dissolves and destroys, allowing new cycles to begin. These forces, described by Jung as God's demons, can be constructive or destructive depending on how we integrate them into our lives. Eros, with its heat and brilliance, can blind and consume us if we pursue it obsessively. The tree of life, with its stability, can trap us if we become too rigid in our route. The balance between these two forces is what allows us to live fully and meaningfully. For example, imagine someone who lives exclusively under the dominion of Eros, always seeking the next thrill, the next passion. This person may experience intense moments of joy and transformation but risks emotional and physical exhaustion. Conversely, a person who avoids desire and remains solely within the stability of the tree of life may feel secure but will lose the opportunity to reinvent themselves and experience the new. In the fourth sermon, Jung reminds us that true wholeness lies in the dance between these forces. To live fully means to accept both the fire of Eros and the patience of the tree of life. A relationship, for instance, requires the initial passion of Eros, but also the solid and enduring foundation of the tree of life to thrive. Similarly, any journey of personal growth requires both the impulse for change and the ability to sustain that change over time. Finally, the sermon challenges us to reflect on how we are managing these forces in our lives. Are we being consumed by the fire of Eros, seeking relentless transformation without sustenance? Or are we trapped in the rigidity of the tree of life, fearing the risks that come with desire? Jung invites us to integrate these energies, recognizing that both are necessary for a balanced existence. Life is like a garden where Eros ignites the initial spark and the tree of life sustains growth. To cultivate this garden, we need both forces working together, the heat that activates the seed and the soil that nourishes its root. This is the essential lesson of the fourth sermon. to accept and balance desire and patience, impulse and stability, fire and earth, as the foundations of a full and meaningful life. The fifth sermon. In the fifth sermon, Carl Jung explores two primordial forces of the human psyche: spirituality and sexuality. These energies, which often seem opposing, are described as archetypal expressions of the divine within us. Spirituality connects us to the transcendent, the infinite, and what lies beyond the material world. On the other hand, sexuality grounds us in the physical, the earthly, and is the creative force that generates and transforms. Jung shows us that these two energies, while different in nature, are not enemies but complementary. Spirituality is symbolized by the Heavenly Mother, Mater Coelestis, receptive and nurturing, associated with the feminine principle. She represents the impulse to seek the divine, to understand and transcend the boundaries of existence. Sexuality, meanwhile, is personified by the phallus, phallos, the masculine principle, creative and generative. It is the force that gives form to life, symbolizing the drive to root oneself in the world and perpetuate existence. Jung emphasizes that these archetypal energies possess divine qualities but can become demonic if imbalanced. Spirituality, when distorted, can lead to a disconnection from the material world, resulting in an illusory pursuit of perfection or purity. Sexuality, on the other hand, when misunderstood, can degenerate into obsession or a loss of meaning, trapping the individual in superficial desires. One of the richest contributions of this sermon is Jung's emphasis on the importance of integrating these two forces. He explains that a man's spirituality tends to be ascending, reaching for the higher, while his sexuality is more earthly and focused on the lower. Conversely, in a woman, spirituality is more connected to the material world, while her sexuality is elevated and transcendent. These complementary differences reflect the dynamic of opposites, showing that the union of these forces is not only possible but necessary for balance. The union of spirituality and sexuality can be observed in a romantic relationship. When these energies are in harmony, love is not merely physical or spiritual but a fusion of both, creating a deep and transformative bond. However, when these forces are in conflict, the relationship can become unbalanced, alternating between idealization and disconnection. Jung also introduces abraxas in this sermon as the mediator of these polarities. Abraxas, being the force that unites opposites, transcends the separation between spirituality and sexuality, demonstrating that both are expressions of the same divine energy. He challenges us to abandon the dualistic view that sees body and spirit as opposites and to recognize that they are inseparable. At the individual level, this balance can be understood as the ability to live fully in both the material and spiritual world. A person who denies their sexuality in the name of a spiritual quest may disconnect from their own humanity, while someone who lives solely to satisfy physical impulses may lose the deeper meaning of existence. Jung reminds us that true fulfillment comes from the acceptance and integration of these forces, allowing them to complement rather than cancel each other out. This sermon also addresses the need for community as a means of balancing these energies. Spirituality flourishes in solitude, while sexuality finds expression in relationship with others. Community, then, becomes a space where these forces can interact harmoniously, helping the individual find balance between the inner and outer world. Jung concludes the fifth sermon with a powerful message. Spirituality and sexuality are not qualities we possess or control but greater forces that flow through us and connect us to the divine. Our task is not to eliminate or repress them, but to learn to live with them consciously and in balance. When we accept these forces as part of who we are, we become more whole, allowing the divine to manifest fully in our existence. In the fifth sermon, Jung invites us to reflect on how we live these polarities in our lives. Are we pursuing a spirituality disconnected from the physical world? Or are we trapped in materiality, without opening ourselves to the transcendent? He challenges us to integrate these dimensions, recognizing that true wholeness can only be achieved when we honor both the sacred and the earthly, the spirit and the body, in a dynamic and transformative union. The sixth sermon. In the sixth sermon, Carl Jung takes us even deeper into the exploration of the opposing forces that shape the human psyche, this time personified as the serpent and the white bird. These two archetypal symbols represent the duality between the earthly and the celestial, between instinctual desire and spiritual thought. They are not merely internal forces but expressions of the very nature of the human soul, constantly pulled between these two extremes. The serpent is described as an earthly soul, semi-human and semi-demonic. It is instinctive, cunning, and deeply connected to the material world and the realm of the dead. The serpent crawls through the depths, carrying the secrets of the unconscious and the wisdom of shadows. It represents earthly desires, the vital impulse that connects us to survival, sensuality, and primal strength. At the same time, the serpent can be seductive and dangerous, leading us to become lost in a cycle of uncontrolled impulses or an excessive attachment to the earthly realm. On the other hand, the white bird is the celestial soul, associated with elevated thought, purity, and detachment from the contingencies of the material world. It is solitary and chaste, a messenger flying high, bringing light and wisdom from the spiritual realm. The white bird represents the desire for transcendence, the quest for connection with the divine, and the impulse for self-knowledge. However, if the white bird flies too far, it can disconnect us from reality, making spirituality empty and impractical. These two archetypes, though opposites, are indispensable to the wholeness of the soul. The serpent keeps us rooted in the material world, while the white bird elevates us to the spiritual. Jung teaches that balance between these poles is essential. A person who lives only for the serpent, consumed by instincts, may become imprisoned by immediacy and materialism. Conversely, someone who seeks only the white bird may disconnect from their humanity, drifting into an ungrounded spirituality detached from real life. Jung describes the relationship between the serpent and the white bird as a complex and paradoxical interaction. The serpent descends into the depths, while the bird ascends to the heights. Yet, both are part of the same movement, and their integration is what allows the human soul to achieve individuation. The serpent, by crawling on the ground, discovers hidden paths that the white bird, with its wide vision, cannot perceive. Simultaneously, the bird brings perspectives that the serpent, bound to the earth, cannot attain. Imagine, for example, a person facing a major life decision. The serpent represents instinct, the visceral impulse connecting them to their most immediate desires and need. The white bird, on the other hand, offers a broader perspective, helping them consider the consequences and greater purpose of their choice. If this person ignores the serpent, they may become overly idealistic, neglecting practical aspects of their decision. But if they ignore the white bird, they may act impulsively, without considering the long-term impact. This sermon also teaches us that both the serpent and the white bird are expressions of the divine, though in different forms. The serpent is the spirit of the earth, connected to the cycle of life and death. It brings the wisdom of the dead, of ancestors, and helps us confront our fears and shadows. The white bird, in turn, is the spirit of the sky, connecting us to transcendence and the light of higher knowledge. Jung describes the serpent as a prostitute, always associated with the dead and the underworld, while the white bird is a solitary messenger, descending occasionally from the heights to deliver messages from the Heavenly Mother. These symbols reveal not only the duality of the soul, but also the dangers of failing to integrate these forces. A person who rejects the serpent may feel uncomfortable with their own shadow, the desires, fears, and impulses that are part of their humanity. Conversely, someone who rejects the white bird may disconnect from their greater purpose, ignoring the spiritual dimension that gives life meaning. Jung warns that only by integrating these two aspects can we achieve a complete and balanced soul. In the end, the sixth sermon challenges us to embrace both the serpent and the white bird within us. They are not forces to be dominated or denied, but energies that must be recognized and balanced. The serpent teaches us to honor our roots, while the white bird calls us to elevate our spirit. By uniting these dimensions, we become more whole, capable of living fully in both the earthly and the divine realms. Jung concludes that the true fulfillment of the soul lies in the creative tension between the serpent and the white bird. When we learn to accept this duality as part of who we are, we move closer to wholeness and inner peace. This balance is what allows us to live authentically, connected to both heaven and earth, to both the spiritual and the material. The seventh sermon. The seventh and final sermon presents humanity as a portal connecting two worlds: the macrocosm, the infinite universe of gods, demons, and souls, and the microcosm, the inner and individual universe of the human psyche. Carl Jung offers a powerful vision of the human being as the intersection point between the infinite and the finite, bearing within them the capacity to navigate between these dimensions and transform them into a meaningful unity. Jung begins by describing humanity as small and insignificant compared to the vastness of the macrocosm. Yet it is precisely this insignificance that makes humanity unique. Humans are the only beings capable of bringing the infinite within themselves, of integrating gods and demons as parts of their own psyche. They are, at once, a bridge and a battlefield where celestial and earthly forces meet, interact, and transform. In the inner microcosm of each individual, there is a solitary star shining in the distance, the unique God of each person. This star symbolizes the individual's destiny, the spiritual guide that leads the soul on its journey. Unlike the external gods of the macrocosm, which are multiple and distant, this star is intimate and personal. It represents the center of a person's inner universe, the place where they can find rest, purpose, and connection with the divine. Jung invites us to reflect on this star as a symbol of our highest potential. Just as each star in the sky is unique and solitary, the inner God of each person is exclusive and cannot be shared or replicated. It is the center of individual experience, the point where the macrocosm is reflected in the microcosm. The journey of the human soul, according to Jung, is a quest to strengthen this connection with their star. He suggests that this journey is not merely a spiritual quest but also a practice of integration. Through prayer, contemplation, and authentic living, one increases the light of their star, strengthening the bond between the visible and the invisible, the earthly and the divine. However, this journey is not without challenges. Jung warns that the fascinating spectacle of Abraxas, the god who unites all opposites, can divert humanity from their star. Abraxas, with its dynamic and paradoxical force, represents the chaos and totality of the external world. It is magnificent but also terrifying, as its complexity can overwhelm the human soul, pulling it away from its individual purpose. Here, Jung reaffirms the importance of distinguishing the macrocosm from the microcosm. While the macrocosm is infinite and incomprehensible, the microcosm is the space where one can find order and meaning. Focusing on one's inner star allows a person to resist the allure of external chaos and build a bridge between the two worlds. This sermon also addresses humanity's relationship with death. Jung describes the star as the soul's final destination, the place where it returns after its earthly journey. By illuminating their star during life, a person builds a bridge over death, transcending the fear of the unknown and finding peace in their connection with their inner God. On a practical level, the seventh sermon challenges us to reflect on how we relate to our own microcosm. Are we in touch with our inner star, our purpose and essence? Or are we lost in the chaos of the macrocosm, distracted by external demands and the endless pursuit of validation and meaning outside ourselves? Jung reminds us that true wholeness does not come from the external world but from the integration of our inner universe. Human beings, therefore, are more than finite creatures trapped between birth and death. They are a portal, a passageway connecting the infinite to the finite, the visible to the invisible. Their existence is both a responsibility and a privilege, as they carry within them the possibility of bringing order to chaos and meaning to mystery. Jung concludes the seventh sermon with a hopeful vision. When humanity accepts its position as a portal, as a mediator between the macrocosm and the microcosm, it becomes a living reflection of the divine. They not only find inner peace but also contribute to the balance of the universe. This acceptance requires courage, introspection, and a commitment to authenticity but offers, in return, the true fulfillment of one's being. Jung's sermons invite us to a deep and compassionate acceptance of all that we are, reminding us that inner fulfillment arises from the integration of light and shadow, spirituality and materiality, creation and destruction. This acceptance allows us to achieve genuine peace, one that does not demand perfection but instead embraces the complexities that make up human nature. By exploring the unconscious and embracing the dualities within us, we discover a sense of unity that transcends the illusions of the ego. Jung's work thus becomes a call for each of us to become a living bridge between the visible and invisible, the divine and the earthly. This integration, more than an ideal, is the path to an authentic and meaningful life. Would you like to make this bridge between visible and invisible forces a reality in your life? In Alchemy and Archetypes, our ebook, you'll find tools to explore and integrate these aspects, guiding you toward a fuller and more meaningful life. If this content resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and join me for the next video.